globally is a critical part of IC3 Live's vision. And really what we're seeing is an amazing response to having a completely open access platform, all of the resources through IC3 Live, including, of course, webinars and keynotes, but also in-depth workshops. The entire IC3 Festival week, which is envisioned for the first week of December, is completely open access at no cost to full-time school employees, teachers, principals, and counselors. So we really hope that this is supporting those initiatives on school campuses. I do just want to give a very quick plug to the 15th July virtual workshop. This is the very first in-depth workshops offered for school-based employees focused on the foundations of counseling. If I could ask the IC3 team to just link and paste a copy of that link in the chat box here for those to access. We've got an amazing a group of experts delivering this in-depth workshop on foundations of counseling, and it's completely free. So principals, do encourage your teachers, counselors to take advantage of that and take a look. So now, I don't want to delay the topic and this discussion. I know there's a lot of perspectives to get to today, but it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Arjun Rao, who's the principal at JVCN International School, Oshiwara in Mumbai. Arjun is also a proud member of the IC3 Presidential Forum Committee. We're so lucky to have him on board and to have his leadership with rich experience coming from also the Dune School, Oak Ridge International. I mean, we've got, it's just such a luxury to have this kind of leadership. And I'm going to turn it over to Arjun to introduce the rest of the panel. And this topic is so critical. And it was envisioned to have some discussion about how school principals, school leaders, school counselors can advise families and parents in the midst of the current situation. And Arjun, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jim, for that very kind introduction, and welcome to all the participants and our panelists who are all here on this thoughtful Thursday. This evening's theme kind of grew out of a couple of conversations we were having on the Presidential Forum, and we were talking about the impact that this pretty unique time is having on all of our young learners as they go about planning their lives through this academic year. Things are changing on almost a daily basis in their lives. They're at home. Most of them have not yet gone back to school since the initial lockdowns happened, definitely not here in India. And we found ourselves as educators, as adults, as parents, I think grappling for information, grappling for how we can actually guide all these wonderful children who are in our charge. We're very lucky to be able to drive this conversation with stakeholders who represent so many different segments who are part of this great process. I'm going to introduce our esteemed panel, and I'm very honored to be here as moderator in this evening's conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sameer Dalwai. He is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician. He is the recipient of the Government of India's Rajiv Gandhi Manav Seva Award for services to children in 2012. Dr. Dalwai is founder and consultant at New Horizons Child Development Center in Mumbai, which has a multidisciplinary team with 5 centers and an online intervention program for children with special needs. He is attached to the Nanavati and Hinduja hospitals in Mumbai and is the National Joint Secretary of the Indian Academy of Pediatrics. Welcome, sir. We look forward to hearing from you a little later on. It's also my pleasure to introduce my colleague on the presidential panel of IC3, Ms. Rupa Chakravarti, who's the director of the Sun City Schools in Gurugram, in the National Capital Territory in India. Ms. Rupa Chakravarti is experienced with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry. She is skilled in secondary education, private schools, education technology, differentiated instruction, and curriculum development. Ms. Chakravarti is a strong education professional with a Master of Arts focused in English Literature, British and Commonwealth from Loreto Convent, St. Joseph's Convent, Calcutta University. Her additional training includes handling of adolescents in Worcester, in the US, strategic leadership for schools in a changing environment at IIM Ahmedabad in India, school management and leadership, CSML, from Harvard University in the United States. She has presented papers across the world, served on CBSE committees internationally, reviewed national education policy, advised USA News on education programs, and won awards in various fields of education. Welcome, ma'am. We then have Ms. Anne Corriveau, Director of International Admissions at the Boston University. During her 20-year tenure at Boston University, she has worked with one of the largest international student populations in the United States, with students representing more than 100 countries. Boston University, BU, is a private teaching and research university ranked number 39 by US News and World Report Best Global Universities. While her primary responsibilities include managing the recruitment and selection of first-year students at Boston University, her role also encompasses the initial immigration process for first-year students. Her recruitment travels have taken her around the world with a special focus on India, where she has been traveling annually for over 20 years. Welcome, Anne. We also have with us Rakhi Mutreja. Rakhi is a proud mother of 2 daughters. She is also an entrepreneur who runs an art studio, The Spinning Wheel, where she has converted her passion for recycling and art into viable business. At her studio, she regularly hosts schools and corporates for imaginative recycling. Finally, and by no means the least, we have with us Nishita Chayanath. Nishita is a senior at the Oak Ridge International School in Hyderabad. Since she was a young child, it has always been her wish to become a doctor. In light of her goal, she has tailored her education to reflect this, leading her to pursue an irregular IB diploma with all science higher level subjects. As she wants to optimize her chances of becoming a doctor, she will primarily be applying to integrated BS, MD programs, with the program in liberal medical education program at Brown University being at the top of her list. So Brown, you've been warned. Outside the classroom, she takes pleasure in the classical dance of Bharatanatyam and performs at national events. Swimming has also found a place in her heart and is something that she participates in at the state level. And we're really lucky because Nishita is going to be our first speaker this evening. She's going to bring us the students' perspective at this about this conversation and with this topic. So Nishita, over to you.
Thanks so much for that introduction. Today I'm going to be talking about the student perspective of VUCA world. And there perhaps isn't something as volatile and uncertain as the world of a student, dynamic and constantly changing. But if there is that one thing that's been constant in a lot of students' lives, it's that end goal of one day going to college, something that modern society has tailored us towards and something that we all aspire to. Coming to college preparedness, one of the first questions that come to mind is, what does it mean to be prepared for college? Leading to the question of, am I ready? And this usually leads us to think about standardized testing, GPA, extracurriculars. Am I unique enough? Am I intelligent enough? Or am I the best at doing what I do? And how has this changed given the current context and the global setting as it is right now? We see that some extracurriculars like sports at a national level or summer programs at research institutes are no longer available to a lot of students. So how do they come up with innovative ways to take charge of their time and truly show that they're using their time in the most effective and productive way? That being said, there's also this uncertainty amongst students of, am I going to get a predicted score that truly reflects my commitment to the classroom. Is particularly as a lot of schools have adopted pass or fail grading systems or curriculums like IB and A-levels that predict scores in the first place. And finally, we come to standardized testing, something students have been working at for a very long time, 6 months, doing tests on tests on tests, and finally that test day comes, and students are shocked now to see that, well, colleges are going test optional, and there's a completely different mindset that we come into as we apply to college. And next, moving to finding your institution and understanding the fact that it is not a one-size-fits-all analogy, and understanding the fact that a lot of the vectors that students have been using to find that best fit, such as campus culture, finding financial aid, or the diversity of the campus itself, how are these going to look different in a post-COVID world? Are they going to be the same? And is that going to change my mind as a student and convince me to prefer some institutions over others? And how is that going to affect the rest of the student body that is also applying? Students who are planning to defer 1 year because they feel that it would be more worth their time and money. And finally, we have creating your portfolio and distinguishing yourself. So before I started working on how COVID is going to affect students, I actually polled a couple of students in my area. If you go to the next slide, you can see one of the first questions that I asked is, are you still looking to apply abroad? And it was an overwhelming yes, because a lot of students are fixated on their dream school. And so it looks like a lot of students are still planning to go abroad. That being said, if you can see in the next slide, we see that most of the students are also very committed to particular countries where they feel safer, or they feel they can really see their futures growing, not just as students, but as professionals after college. But one of the most interesting statistics is what you can see in the next slide. Is, do you think the fact that colleges are going test optional will benefit you? And you see this 50-50 uncertainty, particularly in a part of the world where we are very test driven and statistics driven. How is it going to feel to apply to college knowing that your test scores are optional? And how can you work harder on extracurriculars or work harder on your GPA to make up for that perceived loss that a lot of students are feeling? Next slide, please. Yeah, and what I really appreciate about this statistic is the fact that students understand that their application is being looked at differently. It's being looked at holistically, and this will motivate them to build applications and build portfolios that are better tailored to what colleges are expecting. Extracurriculars that truly reflect who you are and are an extension of yourself and your passions. Something that you look forward to doing not only presently, but in the future as well. Next slide, please. So as I said, you can see that a lot of students believe GPA, extracurriculars, and where you're applying from are important factors that colleges will now be considering. That being said, if you go to the next slide, we'll see that a lot of students also feel that maybe standardized tests that I took this year may not deserve the credit that they would have gotten in a normal testing environment. And that is important to understand, given the fact that a lot of students worked really, really hard for these tests. Next slide, please. And finally, we come to that application, that thing that's gonna make you stand out and really be your face when it comes to how college admissions officers are going to look at you. Should you talk about COVID in your Common App essay, how are you going to use those extra 500 words that the Common App is now allowing you to talk about your challenges in COVID? at the end of the day, I feel like it's very important to stay true to yourselves and not really try to do so many crazy things in your time just to make up for the fact that you're not able to do other extracurriculars. Really be true to yourselves and your commitment to higher education. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nishta, for bringing a student's perspective into this conversation. I think it's really important for us all to remember that in this entire process, the most sorry.
बेटा, मेरी छड़ी उठा दोगे?
जी माँ जी.
Thank you, बेटा.
Okay, sorry. I think you started with Ms. Rupa's presentation. Ms. Rupa, of course, over to you. Your director, Sun City Schools, Gurugram, bringing us the principal's perspective to this entire conversation. Ma'am, over to you.
Let me begin by apologizing. I didn't know that if I just put the cursor and clicked, it would start. My profound apologies to you, Arjun. I think you were stunned to see what was happening. Hello, everyone. I guess this is where we differ from the students who are so good with their technology, and we are still striving to reach somewhere and making a big fool of ourselves. So hello to everybody who's there on board. It is the time where all the students are going to move out of their safe environs into what is known as the VUCA world, and that is where the colleges and universities and the future, the career of these students are at stake. Those are not difficult places, or they are not difficult to reach there, but they are different is what we need to understand and focus on. And when we talk about being different, we also realize that the VUCA world has challenges. And when there are challenges, there is something which I love talking about, and that challenges are what make life interesting, but it is overcoming them which makes life meaningful. So I would want to go back, if possible, and show you this video, because this difference of having the positive and the negative, a similar situation as you saw in the thing. Is it possible, Simona? All right. So that video showed us that the same situation could be positive and it could be negative. So if we have a look at this.
बेटा,
This is the funny which happened in Orissa.
जी माँ.
Thank you, बेटा.
And this is another perspective to a very volatile situation that can occur if we do not ensure that we take the positive out of a situation. The next one, Simon.
Ma'am, do you want me to change the slide?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, which slide would you like?
When we talk about, yes, we are fine. Thank you. So
all right.
When we talk about volatility, it is very important to have that vision when we had Nishita talking, she talked about the child's perspective, a student's perspective, and I talk about the generic perspective that each student must keep in mind. So we have to focus on the change that will come along when we go out into the world. The next one, please. So the first thing we need to do is modify our thinking. We need to understand that we cannot limit our challenges. We have to challenge our limits and ensure a new center of gravity. So as a student, when you go out into the VUCA world, where volatility is a part of the happenings that you would perceive, begin with perseverance, grit, and resilience. Ensure you build on these 3 keywords, which will help you to modify your thinking. The next one, please. And then we come to
China notified the World
acronym.
Health Organization of several cases of human respiratory illness, a disease later named COVID-19.
Who would have guessed a year back that there would be this uncertainty in the world? But this uncertainty has also brought in some of the most important aspects of life. The next one, which is understanding that uncertainty is an absolute part of life that we need to embrace. With this comes the fact that we need to acknowledge our emotions. Every student needs to acknowledge their emotions to modify the situation. So when you feel something, it is important to think over it and to strategize to act upon it. So what should be the keywords that will help you to overcome these different times and help you control your emotions? The first thing is to introspect, to reflect, and also to ensure that you experience some of the things in a more internalized manner. The next one, please.
But the 7th, 1941, and Japanese planes launch a surprise attack on the US. But the Nagasaki killed hundreds of thousands of civilians.
That was a complex situation that occurred in World War II. And that complexity resulted in a lot of happenings around the world. What we need to understand as a student who's going out into the VUCA world is that first ensure that you have clarity of thought and the tenacity to follow that through. There will be complex situations. You just have to ensure that your thoughts are clear. The next one, please. So to bridge that gap in the complex situation, be prepared for surprises. If you don't get into the college of your choice, world will still be carrying on. And there is a time to start again. Remember that very important sentence that many of us who read Gone with the Wind remember, that tomorrow is another day. It's not the end of the world. Hence, it is important for all of us in this situation to predict what may happen, to create a situation where you have plan B or plan C, and to prepare for that. That is imperative for us to ensure that we get over this complexity. And the last one is what we look at in the next slide, and it is what defines today. Here is this man in India, and yes, please. So if you look at this person, and you realize the truth of what is occurring here in India, you know that we have to understand the ambiguities which will arise in life and be prepared for it. The next slide, please. The most important thing for an ambiguous situation is to be adaptable and to face it with alacrity. The next one and the last one. Adaptability is something along with the power of resilience which helps you to accept the challenges. And we agree that this is the toughest to do. And what we need to remember is that tough times do not last, but tough people do. So ensure that you are focused on even on plan B. Ask for support from either your counselor, your friends, your family. But one of the things which I've found to help me a lot is helping others, because it helps you to get over your inadequacies and lack of confidence. So the key words that students should remember when overcoming ambiguity is acceptance, empathy, and mindfulness. The past cannot be changed. The future is yet in your power, and you have it in you. As Nishita proves, we are generation which are not in keeping with times, and we try our best, but our irritation that develops, if it becomes our inspiration, is what is going to make sure that we overcome our challenges. With that, I hand it over to Arjun. Thank you, Arjun, and my apologies once again.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you so much, Ms. Dhrupa, for bringing that perspective to this conversation. I think, I don't know about anybody else, but I've taken so much away from that idea of, being able to be adaptive to any situation that comes your way, to see the positivity in that, in every sort of situation that you find yourself in. Constantly keep planning around any circumstance. But I love the final message. Reach out to your community, because your community will be there for you. I think that's such a strong and powerful note to end on. I think that's great. So thank you so much for that, ma'am. We'll next hear from a parent of a child who's going through this time. She's Rakhi Mutreja. She's a parent of two young girls who are at a school in Bangalore, the Neve Academy. And she is going to talk to us a little bit about what it's been like to have young children at home over the last couple of months, and what her perspective as a parent is in all of these conversations. Rakhi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Arjun. I'm mother to two beautiful daughters. My younger daughter is soon starting grade 9, and my older daughter, Arushi, is starting second year of IVDP. Arushi is an avid reader who's very passionate about music, art, and writing. In fact, it is during the last 4 months we found out that she's interested eventually in becoming a songwriter. Arushi wants to pursue literature from Brown, and her HL subjects are mathematics, economics, and English, and her standard level subjects are Spanish, physics, and geography. So she has a lot on her plate. Last 4 months have been discovery into knowing Arushi and her passions more. This time has made us realize how important it is as parents to take a back seat and let your child take charge of things. Arushi is uncertain about the future, but definitely she's not afraid of it. This time has also made us realize that education and learning is a journey. It is not a destination. What has kept us together as a family is having at least 2 meals together. No matter how busy one is, we make sure that we sit together, have discussions, talk about things, and that really eases the burden which she is going through. Playing board games, having exercise routine, this is the only thing I push her, and this is absolutely non-negotiable. And here are some of the things she focused on during this time, apart from her academic routine and preparation for college. She expressed her desire, since she's going to be driving soon, she wanted to learn how to change the car tire, and she did it independently. Her passion for baking, and whatever we bake at home, whatever she bakes, half of the things she keeps at home and half is going around in the community. Giving back. Arushi has been running a book club since last 3.5 months, and she's been reading to kids from the age of 6 to 12. And this is the time she's found out that how passionate she is about reading to younger kids. Arushi is a certified kid with all 8 grade duns in her music. So she had given a break to music since last 1.5 years because of her academic pressure. But this is the time she picked back her guitar and she's into music. Arushi's been taking few courses from St. John's and New York Writers Workshop, and she's been analyzing Fado with Gita, which is something we are loving when she's talking about the discussions on the dining table. And she's developed the new interest for sewing. And regardless of the mode and medium of learning, we are there to support her in her journey. So the destination is important, but we do care about the journey in her learning process. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Rakhi. I think I think a lot of parents who are on this call will eventually start wondering, what do they do? What do they feed their children to be able to see this kind of development in their own homes? And I think it's remarkable because so many of us have just assumed that our children are going through these times where we have to manage every moment of their day. They're at home. How will they be engaged? They must be watching, I don't know, Netflix all day or whatever. And here we have such a wonderful example of somebody who's been able to discover these amazing elements about herself and perhaps even rediscover some of those elements. So I'm glad, you're here to bring us that perspective. And I hope we're going to be able to hear more about it. We now bring to you...
Yes. On the lighter note, 4 of us, we have our blood group as B positive, and the mantra in the house is, we have to stay positive. There is no other way for us.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Dr. Sameer Dalwai to you all again. He's, of course, such a well-known figure in the circuit in Mumbai, and has been bringing his perspective during this time to parenting, to education. I know I have really benefited from hearing him speak, and I know that he's going to leave you all with so many thoughts that are going to really get you wondering about what we can all do to help our children. Dr. Dalwai, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Arjun, and it's a pleasure to be here on the IC3 forum with all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. And I'm going to, as you mentioned, look at it from a perspective, and I recollect that the topic is we are talking about the university processes and planning for the university amidst this crisis. I thought actually universities are those which prepare you for a crisis. So I think we need to all understand that crises were always there in one's life. I recollect going to college after passing my 12th standard exams. We had to look at admissions in medicine. So it was as uncertain, as volatile as it could be, because there are always less number of seats than the aspirants. So the volatility and the VUCA situation has always been there. Of course, it is magnified many more manifold now. But let's also understand that everybody is going through the same situation. So perhaps it's kind of a level playing field, because this uncertainty is not only in my house or yours, it's all across the world. And it's, in a way, I always compare what happened to the dinosaurs so many thousands of years back. When the ice age stuck, it was the dinosaurs who became extinct. What it meant was their time had come, because they had failed to evolve further. They had become huge, they had become unwieldy, they couldn't really manage. And once there was a change in the environment, they died. What it means is, if you are not flexible, you are not going to evolve. And if you can't evolve, that's the end of you. So what this uncertainty is going to bring us is evolution. But what stops or comes in the way is our resistance, because we are so happy within our own comfort zone that we don't want to step out outside it. And that is why we resist any kinds of uncertainty or any challenges that we may have. And once we start doing that, what we see is anxiety. Anxiety is very simply defined as when the demands far exceed the resources that you have. And when you cannot pay your EMI because you're not earning that much anymore, or you are not sure about what the university is going to ask for, and you haven't prepared for it in the last 2 or 3 years, as we saw two very good examples of having prepared for it, suddenly there is anxiety because there's uncertainty. We don't know how the university is going to look at our applications anymore. And Nishita put out that survey there, which really shows the confusion and thereby the anxiety in everybody's mind. And when you see that in today's situation, everywhere, it's not only with your university exams, it's what's going to happen at home, it's what's going to happen with your parents' job or whatever else, and health, of course, it's going to lead to a kind of a paranoia. And that, unfortunately, is going to spoil or be a deterrent in our own performance in whatever we do. And this is the message that I'd like to share with our young friends, that this is very important to know when it comes to looking at our own performance and keeping it up. So going ahead, how do you deal with this? I think it's something like I mentioned earlier, it's our comfort zone. We are very happy. We're being dinosaurs, happy in our own comfort zone. And that's a form of endowment that we had everything going for us. We had a family which was looking after every whim and fancy of ours. And as Rupa ma'am showed the picture of 9.3 million people just having lost their daily wages, and they were daily wage workers. How do you deal with that? On the contrary, look at what we have lost. I mean, we are still inside our houses. We have comfortable dwelling. We have electricity. We have food. We have everything that we want, including Netflix. So it's also important that one of the resistances that we have is our endowment, and we need to understand and reject it. And hence, as again she mentioned, we need to accept the fact that endowments, comfort zones simply don't work anymore. And we need to accept this, that look, all of us have to start again at ground zero. And it's a fantastic thing because it actually levels the playing field for all of us. And it makes us understand in the long run that, well, Nishita mentioned a very wonderful statement when she said that how do you project yourself as a unique one that the university is looking for? Well, let me tell you, friends, all of us are unique anyways, and it's for us to decide how unique we are. It's not for some gentleman or lady sitting in a university who's going to go through your papers and look at your marks and look at your essays and whatever else you may have reported that you have done to decide whether you are unique enough or no. Let's please understand that being unique doesn't mean you have to be extraordinary. Being unique means you have to accept who you are and you have to be happy with it. And that's what makes it all the more important. And hence, if you are still pressurized to be somebody unique from somebody else's point of view, you are going to be in a situation that's going to lead to anxiety. And not just now, it's always. Because if you're trying to look up or live up to getting that particular college, that particular seat, or having that particular car to make you happy, or that particular house, or that particular job, or that particular spouse, you're going to have difficulty because not all of it is in your hands, and it never was. It's not really changed because of COVID. Let's understand one thing. The only thing that COVID affects directly, the coronavirus affects directly, is the ACE receptors in your lung cells. Everything else is a manifestation of what we had brought the world to. And hence, it's possible that you're going to find this very, very overwhelming. And the most important thing to do when you find anything overwhelming, when like we said, the demands outpace the resources, please, please, please reach out. Reach out to whoever you can, because everybody else is going through a problem at the same time. Maybe those whom you reached out usually to, those doors may not be that receptive now. Find somebody else. But please understand, the single most thing that really helps all of us going is reaching out to somebody who may have that word or a sentence or a song that is going to get your spirits up. And hence, to go ahead, I'd just like to again share a message with all of you that we've heard of the VUCA acronym. I've tried to put together something else. And the first alphabet that I want to start with is A, and the word is attend. It doesn't matter whether you succeed with what you do tomorrow. It doesn't matter. What matters is start with what you have. Start with what you can do. As you go along, look at what's happening. Is it working? Is it not working? Is it succeeding? Observe that, analyze it, and be open to innovate and change on the go. If you are going to be a dinosaur who's stuck at one place and unwieldy and cannot move and cannot evolve, it's not going to work. It doesn't mean you need to have the perfect answer. Please stop looking for perfect answers. That's a very important message I'd like to share. There are no perfect answers today. So attempt, go with the flow, change, modify, innovate, and keep going ahead. That's the most important thing today, that we have to keep attempting. And while you're doing that, doesn't matter whether 10 attempts fail, 20 attempts fail. It's the resilience that, yes, I will keep going ahead. I will keep on with it. That's going to be very, very important. That's where you don't need to let anybody else or anyone else judge you as to your importance or your uniqueness. You are you, and it's your attempt and your effort that's going to define you and make you better and more resilient. And in today's world, what's very important to understand is all of us have limitations, and none of us can exist by oneself alone. And what we need is not just cooperation, but we need collaboration and care. We need to, what's the difference between cooperation and collaboration? If somebody just wants me to do a part of what they're doing, okay, I'll do it. I'll cooperate with you. But collaboration is, no, I will work with you and I will help you to do even better than what you expected from me. And both of us can do much better than what we could have done or achieved by working together, by only cooperating. So let's collaborate with care. And that's going to really be very, very useful in today's times. And finally, I cannot emphasize the importance of humor in daily life. I'll only leave you with one statement for that. If you haven't seen, please see this film called Life is Beautiful. And it talks about a Jewish gentleman who's in a Nazi concentration camp, Auschwitz, I think, with his 6-year-old child or a boy. And how he keeps that child's humor up and keeps up his resilience and keeps up his spirit is phenomenal movie that you must watch. And it emphasizes the importance of humor in day-to-day life that keeps you going. And hence, I'm going to put up this small acronym, which is basically an arch that's going to help you bridge your way to the future. And hence, while going ahead, again, while she mentioned, please understand, there is no one size fits all. There's no one way that all of us are going to succeed. There are no definite, sure, short answers. There are no guides. There are no teachers. There are no project managers. So if plan A fails, there are 25 more letters in the alphabet. And finally, I'm going to leave you with something that's going to sound perhaps very cheesy. It's going to sound like a Dharma Productions or a Karan Johar film. But believe me, that's why those films work. Because what they talk about is just love. Love your own life, love yourself, and love others. This is one thing that you cannot go wrong with today, because everybody is in need of it. And if you give it to others, you will get a lot of it yourself. And that reaching out is going to give you all the resilience you need to go through this uncertain time. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take it at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dalai, for sharing that. I love this arches. I think I'm going to adopt that acronym. I think it's going to be something that's going to keep us all going as we start to wonder what to do with ourselves. And I just loved the way you've flipped the entire perspective of a crisis, and I'm hoping that we can talk about this a little more at the end. Finally, thanks, sir. Finally, our speaker for this evening, representing Boston University and talking about admissions in general, is Anne Corriveau. She's going to now talk to us early in the morning, where it is in Boston, and talk to us about the university perspective. Anne, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I must say, I've been so inspired by listening to everyone. And I agree with Dr. Dalai that La Vita è Bella, Life is Beautiful, is a must-see, especially now. You reminded me I need to watch that again. So thank you. But really what I want to do today is ease some of the anxiety that we're very aware is out there. And Nishmita was talking about her list and her survey. I couldn't help but just really respond to that, because these are the things that institutions, universities, and colleges, at least I can speak for my colleagues at sort of the selective universities in the United States, are thinking about and we're very aware of. So when I say I want, because we are all living in this experience. It's not that admissions boards are sitting behind a desk far removed from COVID-19. We are our current students, we're finished the semester remotely. And so as we strategize how to have rich learning experiences for all of our students, including the incoming students, how we're going to select them and make sure that they're the right fit. And so, it's really something that we're coming at. And when we think about students, we're thinking about them through this lens that we are all living. And so if you could go to the next slide, please. So what thing, which just to quote Nishmita when she was talking about, finding a great fit, being the right fit for a university. At the end of the day, we want students who will join us, be successful, thrive, be happy students, enjoy and stay there 4 years, go on and be great alumni and live a full life. And that's what we want. And that hasn't changed. So very, very little has changed. But I do want to some of the point of view. So again, we've always had a holistic review. And pre-COVID-19, when I would talk to students and families, I would begin with, I promise you, this will end well for your sons, your daughters, your students. And I say the same thing today. You will be in the place, whatever college to which you aspire, you will thrive, you will be happy, you'll be adaptive, and it will all work out. It always does. And I'm not new at this game, so I can tell you it's very, very true. But when I think about the holistic review, there have certainly been some adaptations we've made as we think about our applicant pool. At BU, we get about 1,000 applications for admission for our freshman first-year admission each year. And a good number of those, about 24% of our first-year class, are international students. India always ranks in number 2 or number 3. They toggle sometimes a little bit for that position, but very well represented on our campus. So again, holistic review existed before COVID-19 and continues to be how we think about who we want in our classrooms and in our residential communities. While those have changed, we are in the business, and our university president will say, our business is a residential community. Now, this has altered some of that for the short term. One of the things I will say sometimes to my committee is, would you want to be that person's roommate when we're looking at a file? So it really gets down to the person. And so this idea of being authentic in this process for students that are applying, I think is so critical, and not thinking of it from a strategic standpoint. What will the university want? What do you want on my CV? Almost to say, Ms. Corvo, tell me what to be and I will be it for you. And that's not what we want. And I think authenticity is really at the core of this. And so let's just talk through these holistic review points here. So the first thing that, and I think it was on your survey, Nishita, of the most, I think that was students identified as the most important aspect. Grades have always been important, and I would argue they've always been the most important. But again, in holistic review, they're not the only thing that we're looking at, right? I mean, research tells us, this isn't rocket science, that students who are successful students in their IB or in their final years of the exam, national exam, that those predict how they will do at a university. They directly correlate to how the GPA will be their first semester at Boston University. But we know in this COVID time, right, that many schools went completely remote. In the US, I'm not sure if this is true in India or other countries, but many schools went pass fail. We know that the IB changed the ways that they assess. AP did as well, A-levels, all of it, everything changed. So we know that. So you have to trust, I think, that institutions like BU are aware of this, looking at you through that lens, like we've always done. We've always looked at students through that lens of where are they, what's their context of their school, what curriculum are they in, and so on. So all of that is to say, rest assured, we know what's going on with all the different external exams and the changes that are happening, and we will consider that. And then you mentioned, test optional and how you've been preparing and really working hard to get these tests, which have been a priority perhaps in your culture, or and that varies definitely. The trend in test optional isn't new. That's been coming. I think this may have obviously accelerated institutions to think about testing. So we've gone test optional, and as you can see that unfolding. And so I know students are anxious and say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that my grades are going to be more important? It really means that we've taken out one factor for you. Now, some students will elect to still submit testing, and that's okay. They certainly may. We would welcome that too. I think that's the kind of thing you want to make sure you discuss with your guidance counselors to make sure that submitting those tests are in your best interest, that they really do demonstrate your skills in the way you wish them to the board. So, things like TOEFL and IELTS, many schools are accepting things like Duolingo and other more accessible testing. I know that IELTS has an at-home test. So there's the whole world is modifying to sort of help us have some data points to make informed decisions about. One thing I would say to this is I think the counselor letter will be really important for us. How secondary schools really were pivoting and changing during this COVID-19 with degrading change. What happened? I think they're going to really have to help us with that context. So I think there's a lot more perhaps on the counselor letter and the school profile this year. I've had a lot of my colleagues, I had a colleague from Switzerland call me and just say, we're thinking of adding this to our transcript. Do you think that's okay, Anne? And I said, absolutely. I think the more information, the better in this environment, because everyone's doing things differently and for their students, which they should be, because every community is different. In terms of extracurricular activities, I had one student ask me recently that there was a place offering, hey, like you pay so much for a virtual internship. And I said, there's no need to do, you don't need to do that. All we really care about, we know COVID's happening, right? My life, right? What am I doing? I'm taking an online Italian class, I'm doing all these different things. So it's, how are you spending your time? Are you helping your family? Are you sharing more meals together, as Rocky said, or whatever your patterns are? That's what we care about. What we're trying to understand is who you are and if you'll be a great fit for us. And that comes through with just being your authentic self. And as so many have said today, exploring new parts of yourself that maybe you hadn't seen before. You were in this particular mode of isolation or living very, very differently, right? So we want all that to come alive. I think too, when it comes to essays, as was pointed out, there will be a section on the Common Application for COVID. I thought the Common App, that was a very smart decision on their part. And so I think that's sort of a place, we've all been affected, and a place for students to speak to that. But it doesn't mean that if that is the thing that is really important for you to express, that it should not be in your general essay as well. I mean, far be it for me to tell a student what to write. And I get that question all the time from students. What should I write in my essay? And I say, if I tell you what to write, then it will not be authentic, and it will just seem, it will fall flat, I think. So I think students need to just think about, what is it that I can learn about you that you want to share? And maybe it is COVID related, and maybe, I expect there'll be a lot of essays around COVID, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If there's something that, as long as I can learn about you, I think that's the important piece here. And then the additional factors have always been there, right? Like, do you speak many languages? What are your experiences? Have you lived in many countries? So those kinds of things are always going to be something we're going to consider. So I think at the end of the day, again, I just want to ease anxiety at every university, at least my colleagues in the US, and believe me, we have lots of forums and we're chatting about all these issues all the time, are really thinking about where you're coming from, and so I'm reassured by the resilience I'm seeing in students, the flexibility. I think students have been inspiring, and I'm hearing that today with our student panelists. And I think that, we'll all get through this, and it will end well, and students will be happy in their new university homes, wherever they are, and that I can guarantee. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Anne, for sharing that. I think, a lot of that reassurance has really come through, in the calm manner that you've spoken. I think a lot of parents who've been wondering, oh my God, what should we do? And learners who've been also trying to figure this one out will have just, I think, immediately relaxed. So thank you for the tone also, not just what you said, but how you said it, which was fantastic. I'd like to thank all the speakers. I mean, you've really addressed so much over here. And I know that there are so many people asking questions. And unfortunately, as is with these things, we are very strapped for time. So I'm just going to kind of try and go through a couple of questions that have come through. Nishita, you've been kind of put down as the resident expert on the chat. Everyone wants your advice. So let me kind of try and paraphrase some of the questions that are there to put them all together. Sure. You did that survey. You're doing so much. You're studying all these things. You're still focusing on your dance. You're looking at so positively at everything. I think one thing that I think a lot of adults would like to understand is, how do you remain so optimistic and grounded and focused on your work? Are there any specific strategies that you use? I mean, how do you ensure that you maintain that train of thought?
It's different for everyone, I believe, finding that path. But I think it really helps me to understand what my goals are in the long term. And it really, I love talking to people. So like in the middle of the night, I might call my friend, or I might just sit with the neighborhood aunties and we might just have a discussion. And I just love being around people. And I feel like it helps ground me and understand that there is like a life other than college and school. And so that really does help me remain optimistic, just talking to people and engaging in the community.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I think this idea of community is something that everybody has kind of hinted at in different ways, bringing people together, talking to people. I think Ms. Rupa also talked about this notion of leaning on people, allowing that trust to be able to develop. Ms. Rupa, could you perhaps share some ideas with a lot of the educators who are on this panel about how we can look at focusing on building strong communities around the school and building and fostering those relationships in this virtual scenario?
The main thing that helps in fostering relationships is faith, the belief that they will deliver. So if faith is there, to build faith, it cannot be built in one day. We all know that. This is the scaffolding that's happened over the years. And it is only during such VUCA times or positively in arch times, like Dr. Dalwai said, is when your faith gets endorsed and reinforced. And I think to do that, just keep, like, I'll give you just an example which I have taken up in these 3 months, of course, except for the couple of weeks that we had off for the vacation. I call up parents every day. It could be just one parent, 3 parents, and I ask, are you facing any problems? Is there something we can do to bridge the gap, to enhance your child's learning, and reply, because it's virtual, reply to their mails immediately, because otherwise they become very anxious and they start losing that faith. So I think I would suggest 2 very strong things. I hope you've built that faith over the years. And secondly, to ensure in virtual times it carries on, be in touch, even though it's virtually, by calling them up or writing to them. Arjun, I would say that.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. I think, those communities that we can lean on, that we can rely on through even the toughest times will really, stand the test of time. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think you also paraphrased, and I think we're all going to take away this new acronym, ARCHES, that Dr. Dalwai has coined. Dr. Dalwai, I want to ask you a question. I mean, I'm sure you meet so many parents, you meet so many children in the line of your work. And, for example, Nishita earlier reminded me that when she was in the 10th, I tried as her principal in her current school. I was the previous principal there. And she tried to remind me, I tried to convince her not to study the 3 sciences. Because I think in my mind, I was like, oh my God, how can people want to do such a crazy thing? It's so difficult, focus on something that might be easy. And she's doing it, and she's doing such a phenomenal job of it. And I think, what I want to ask you is, how do we remind parents and educators of one very crucial thing, that they were also students one day, and now look at them, they're okay, they've made it through. How do we keep showing them that mirror so that they don't show a totally distorted mirror to their children and, put that pressure on them during this time?
Yeah, it's very simple. The whole world is in the grip of the worst crisis in our lifetime. Name one doctor, scientist who's got a cure for it. Nobody has. It's your next door GP, family physician, who's of more use to you today to give you that assurance or that paracetamol or that injection or get you admitted somewhere if you need. The topmost, most brilliant Nobel Prize winners are of no use today. In COVID times, it's your next door neighbor, it's your community, as Ms. Rupa said, who's going, as Nishita said, reaching out to people, calling up friends in the middle of the night for a chat, that's going to help. And it's very, in a way, I don't want to be preposterous to say that's a good thing that happened, but this is a crisis that I believe was waiting to happen, not because of your lungs getting infected by COVID, but by nature or divinity or whatever you believe, telling you what are you up to? What are all of you up to? I see this mad, insane race that parents indulge in to get their child to perform and perform and perform and to be rated by somebody else. We make the child believe that, look, everybody else's marks and judgment and giving you, selecting you for admission is what is very important. And then when the child is upset or depressed, we say, no, you are very important. You should have a lot of self-confidence. It's a baggage that we keep feeding them day in and day out. And I would tell you that the most important thing when we talk about humor is laughing at yourself and taking yourself a little more lighter than you ought to. And if you do that, you'll probably end up passing that on to the kids as well. And I understand parents are worried that we need to really get our kids to perform. But like I mentioned, at the end of the day, no Nobel Prize winner, who anyway we don't remember the last 5 Nobel Prize winners, but we remember the 5 teachers from our school. Those are the things and people that matter.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, this is such a perspective that I think, like all your sessions, we have to now sit and think about this for a couple of hours as the adults that we are. And people are asking, and this one's for you, people are asking very technical questions, which I think only you can answer. So there was one about, I think you talked a lot about how the perspective on what the holistic application is going to look like. It's going to learner is going through at this point of time and how that's impacting them. So that's great. I think that's one part of it answered. But I think people are still asking these questions about the standardized tests. What does that mean? And also about possible changes in whether you're going to see changes in courses. Are you going to see the nature of what those changes are going to be like as time goes by? Do you think you're in a position yet to talk a little for next year?
Well, a little bit. It is a little early. We've been pivoting throughout, and everything keeps shifting and changing. But in terms of courses, you're asking, I don't know if you mean how they're delivered or the content, but the course content at BU is all, and for any university, has always been shifting as student needs shift, as knowledge changes, as new knowledge comes in. So that's not anything new. In terms of how we're delivering education in the fall, it will be something we've titled Learn from Anywhere. So it's a modality that allows more of a hybrid approach. And again, we're 10th in the country for hosting international students. So the conversation around international students and modality of learning has been front and center as we've made these decisions about what we will be doing. Again, we're in the business of as a residential campus, so we will be open for a physical campus with distancing, and our researchers are working on COVID-19. We were featured in a Nova episode, so there's good things happening, but not fast enough, right? We're all pausing in this moment. In terms of testing, I think the challenge is that in the US, as you all know, there is no standardization, right? There is no real system of higher education in the sense that there is this one sort of parent, speaking to all the institutions. Everyone has their own policies, their own, SAT, TOEFL requirements, and so on. And I know people are always curious about that. So it's hard to give kind of a blanket answer around institutions in general, but we are seeing more and more universities, and even throughout the summer, continue to offer a lot of flexibility, especially as big organizations like the College Board and like ETS, who hosts the TOEFL, are talking about the limits that they're seeing, and they're also unveiling new ways students can fulfill those requirements. So this is all, I think, continuing to shape up. So I think if you're keen on a university, you should really pay close attention to those particular websites, which I know is challenging.
Okay, I think that's a direction that a lot of people will start taking, and closely tracking a lot of that information as it starts becoming available. And as Dr. Dalwai said, everybody is going through this at the same time. That's what makes it such a unique moment, because there's nobody who's got a unique experience that is different from this. So yes, we'll all remember that. Rakhi, the final question for the evening, I think, is going to be to you. I think now that we've heard about your daughters and the work that your older daughter's been doing, I think everyone's just wondering how they can replicate the same thing. What's the formula? As always, how we are as parents. But I think one of the questions that we got was, how a lot of young learners, and I mean, even class 12 students are still young learners, how they're not being able to focus on school like I suppose their parents would like them to, and their teachers would like them to. They're spending a lot of time online and, glued to televisions and, all that kind of thing. And I think some parents are struggling with what they can do. And teachers are also not being able to motivate learners to be able to become the kind of students that they've always been. I think two-pronged kind of question, Rakhi. One is, how does a parent, how did you manage to create that space for your children to, accomplish all these wonderful things in this bizarre time? And also, to be able to have that sort of perspective on parenting. I remember when we first spoke, you spoke of a little surprise at what your children were being able to do. So how does a parent and how does an educator kind of look at this?
I feel it's important for kids to have a routine. So if they have a routine, you somehow as a parent know that to what extent they are following the routine. And when you're having the conversations during your meal time, you can just discuss to what extent have they achieved what they are doing, do they need some external help, and let them take charge of things. That is really, really important for the kids to do. And just let them be.
Just let them be. Something I used to sometimes say at my school, people used to ask me, when they were talking about students like Nishita, this is what teachers always do, like reflected glory. So when they would ask me about students like Nishita, I would always say, they would say, how do you make sure this happens in your school? And like you said, I used to say, just stay out of their way. And our children will do some of the most phenomenal things that they will surprise everybody but themselves.
And I feel you need to be engaged with them. And engagement doesn't mean that it has to be academic engagement. It could be any form of engagement. And they really feel uplifted. So yeah, it's important.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to all of you who've been here as panelists, and also those who've been here as participants. Thank you so much for joining us. And on behalf of IC3, I'd like to thank you all, especially our panelists, for taking out time and being with us here today. And of course, all our participants. I'm told that there will be a recording available on the IC3 Live sites and so on. So you can check this all out again and get more information and follow whoever you need to be able to decide more about what the future brings. But as Dr. Dalai said, arches, focus on that, build that community, that positivity, and remember, you're in this together with so many people. With that, we thank you all very much for your time, and we wish you all the very best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. All the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Arjun. Thank you very much for having moderated this so well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.